Ladies and gentlemen, coming to you from the Colonial Dungeon, this is the Court-Martail Podcast! Introducing your host for this evening, he has a bald spot on the top of his head, and he weighs in tonight at a number you don't need to know. He is the Colonial Loudmouth, Sean McCarty! And welcome to another fantastic edition of the Court-Martail Podcast. I am, as always, your Colonial Champion, Sean McCarty, here today with the all-out review. The AEW 2020 review, the moment you have all been waiting for, as I have heard unfathomable, dire calls for this to happen. More so than any other podcaster, they want to know what my opinion is on this pay-per-view, but I won't be doing it alone. Because by my side, as per usual, the man who has franchised a shampoo that goes in places you don't want to know belong and you don't want to know where come from. He's a guy who makes sure that he is available and pitches his post for co-host every single time that there is a camera near his face. He is the one and only Skyler Greenberg. Welcome back to the show.
'Cause I'm bad. Well, I'm back in black. Yes, I'm back in black.
You had an opportunity to go with the Eric Bischoff theme, and you chose AC/DC.
Because AC/DC is awesome.
So was Eric Bischoff's theme. That was the best part about him.
Well, maybe Eric Bischoff was on the show.
Yeah, so there you go, Eric. Putting that ball right in your court. Don't need to be doing 83 weeks. Need to be doing the Court-Martail Podcast. But thankfully, Eric was not here for All Out 2020. I was telling Sky before we started, I have 5 front and back pages of notes for this show. This show was absurdly long. But overall, what did you think?
Well, actually, I want to talk about something that you mentioned on the last podcast, and I want to get to that very quickly before we talk about All Out.
I'm down for revisiting a topic.
So, yes, on the last week's podcast, you talked about issues for why wrestling is not as good as it used to be.
Yes.
And one of the things you mentioned was the internet and how it's made fans smarter.
Yes.
But it's also made them seem like they think they know what they can do because they learned a couple of insider terms or they know terminology of wrestling, and that suddenly makes them bookers.
Hence why we're here.
But in particular, if the wrestlers and the people that were booking the shows actually did the shows better, then we wouldn't be complaining. And
maybe.
That's part of the reason why we have this podcast and why we are talking to you, the Court-Martail Podcast listeners.
True.
Because we talk about events of the past few weeks of wrestling. We have our review shows like today where we're reviewing our show. And our fantasy booking shows showing how we would book a modern wrestling company if we were given the opportunity to.
And then that, speaking of, which is a hell of a segue to our small little bit of promotion, because that is happening next week on the Court-Martail Podcast. That is right. We've got NWL's Heart Foundation Cup Trios Tournament, as well as the first major pay-per-view, quote-unquote, or the major show of the Atlantic Coast Pro Wrestling, and that, of course, is Harvest Havoc, and we will be going through both of those next week. But unfortunately, we're going to have to put ourselves through the dredges, as we both aspire to be alcoholics thanks to professional wrestling. All Out 2020.
But that's bringing back to my point, is that we started this podcast and this particular channel because we grew frustrated with WWE, and now we can add AEW to the mix, and they're booking decisions.
Well, I just like complaining.
Was a show.
Pretty much, I mean, when I started the podcast, I was like, I just like wrestling so much, I want to talk about it, good and bad. Unfortunately, there's so much bad that it makes it's more lucrative as a podcaster to actually just be yelling about stuff. And that's why we've gotten the following that we have, I think, has been through anger and spit and vinegar. And there was none to be spared after All Out was over. Did you watch the buy-in?
No, I did not watch the buy-in because I did not want to start my drinking early.
All right, well, let me break down the buy-in. I will try to do this as fast as possible. In case what you're wondering what that sound is, folks, it's catering. Because this is Memorial Day weekend after all, folks, and we'll get to that in a minute. So, first we have the first thing I wrote is that Tony Schiavone, who's introducing everybody, and Dasha, I think is her name. Dasha says, it's an infectious atmosphere here at AEW, and I thought that was a poor choice of words. For obvious reasons.
Very much.
Anyway, then they do a whole set of promos on the Casino Battle Royale, and I thought most of these promos were great. Every one of them. I mean, Christopher Daniels was a good one. Kazarian's was good. Santana is great. Ortiz is a goof. Even Darby's wasn't that bad. They were decent promos. They did a few, and then Tony must have been smoking some of that sweet Jacksonville herb because he was all over the place. Both on the pre-show and the entirety of the rest of the show. Then they cut to the promo of Jericho with the video package, trying so hard to put Orange Cassidy over. We'll talk about that later. The Young Bucks being weenies on promos. And, a whole bunch of promos, whole mess of stuff like that. And then finally, we get to Excalibur joining the commentary team. Oh, hooray. I'm so excited for Excalibur. I thought, now, I want to hear your opinion on this. What did you think of the angle of the camera shot of the commentators all night? Where they were staring at their camera, they're staring at their monitors, but they had to, look up and to their left to actually get the shot of the three commentators.
So, it's important to note the actual arena that they're in. They're out in Outdoor Plaza nearby the Jacksonville Jaguars Stadium, football stadium.
It's called Daly's Place. It's called Daly's Place, in case JR didn't mention it 612,000 times.
Oh, yeah. And there's also a baseball arena on that same complex, which we will mention later on.
Yes. And we will get to that.
But Daly's Place is not meant for professional wrestling at all. It was not built with professional wrestling in mind. Did you notice for the matches that the hard camera was 20 miles away from the ring?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they had that zoomed all the way up. And
because they had to, because there was no place to put the hard camera close to the ring so you could see the action, besides a couple of cameras that were next to the ring. But otherwise, camera is so far away.
But in some respects, maybe having the camera so far away to not catch this action would have been better than us actually looking at it. And that brings us to our first match of the night, which was Serpentico with Luther, who it looks like Igor from Young Frankenstein, versus Joey Janela with Sonny Kiss. For whatever reason, those two are a team. This match was the worst match of the show. By far. I mean, at least there was... The whole theme of this show, at least to me, was that it was decent stuff. There was a great show wedged into a whole mess of garbage. There was a great 2.5-hour show in segments of this 6-hour show. This match did not belong in any part of that. It started at 100 miles an hour with no context. They do a terrible flapjack setup. They do some top rope shenanigans. And then we get more double foot stomps. And Janela, God, I cannot look at this dude. He is just, I don't call people ugly, but he's flabby, and he's got like a toad face, and it's just not fun. And then they did a really crappy superplex. There was a weak comeback. And then Joey Janela uses Randy Savage's elbow to win. What did you think?
I did not watch this. I have never seen the appeal in Joey Janela. he is a really, really small, not impressive looking guy. He's just a guy. That's all he is.
Who's clearly never been trained, by the way, because all of his stuff looks awful.
No, half of the people on AEW don't look like they've been trained at all. They just go out there and pretend to hit wrestling moves.
Well, because AEW is the glorified indie show, that's what it's always been. That's what they've always wanted their identity to be for whatever reason. But then...
By the way, the thing that encapsulates this match for me are two things. First, when you were done reviewing this match, you asked me, this was 10 minutes, it should have gone 5. I actually told you it was 7 minutes and 30 seconds.
Oh, yes, right. And
you could not believe that it only went 7 minutes.
Because it went forever. It felt like it went forever. These two did not have any chemistry. Igor, the fucking side-humped maniac, didn't even get involved. There was nothing to this. There's nothing for this. I still don't get why Janela and Sonny Kiss are together. Have they explained this at all on television? I'm guessing not.
Well, we don't watch AEW television. This is my first AEW show. I've seen highlights, but I haven't seen any actual matches.
Oh!
This was my first show.
I didn't know that. I would have made a much bigger deal about that in the intro. About you breaking your AEW virginity and wishing you could sew it back up. But moving right along.
By the way, the second thing I wanted to say about this match. Did you hear about what happened on Fight TV?
No. I'm hoping they just canceled it.
No. So what happened was after this match had gone off air, there was a hot mic with JR and Tony Schiavone. And JR asked, why the hell do they keep booking this guy as a face? Tony Schiavone says, I don't know. And then Jim Ross says, he should be a heel because he sucks as a wrestler, so at least if he's a heel, I can hate him.
Yeah. And
that was caught on a hot mic on Fight TV.
Well, I was going to feel bad for JR in this whole thing, but, like, I'm going to get to why
he knows what he's involved in. He knows what he's involved in.
I'm going to get to why I think that the WWE commentary is better than the AEW commentary in a little bit. Because I know that's a bold statement, but I'm going to justify it later. But there's another match. We're not done with the pre-show. The next match is, I didn't even get these guys' names. Adam Silver and some other dude, Dark Order number 3 and 4.
You got them wrong. It's Alex Reynolds and John Silver.
See, there you go. See, this is why that we have you on the show, is to correct my I don't know who these people are.
I can look at Wikipedia while you're talking.
I'm glad you did it, because it's Dark Order 3 and 4 versus Private Party.
You mean Street Profits?
I mean Private Party. I would take Private Party over Street Profits.
No, you mean Street Profits, because they're exactly the same.
Well, I think that Private Party's got some talent, though. That's the difference. Yeah, sorry guys, but that's the stone cold truth. Private Party, even though it is the same gimmick, there are some things I really like about them and some things I hate about them. For example, Justin Roberts introing them weighing in 24 ounces of vodka cranberry is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Oh wait, because he has other ones like that. Just messing with the billing like it doesn't matter to begin with how much these guys weigh. Let's not try to make this something of an athletic competition or any semblance of, oh, these guys are weighed in alcohol. It's like,
it's the cheapest humor.
It's lame, but we got a lockup. This started with a collar and elbow tie-up. Most of the time on AEW reviews, I have to keep a collar and elbow tie-up counter because there will be maybe 1, maybe 0. Most of the things just jumpstart. This match got a lockup.
Here's my question. Was it even a good collar and elbow tie-up?
Pretty decent, I would say. This match actually was not bad. I did not hate this. I actually was very much impressed with the two schlubs from the Dark Order who were both in pretty decent shape. I don't get them putting the masks on to wrestle because they already are coming out with their faces exposed. It's not like they're concealing anything. The there was a lot of double team stuff at the beginning. You know, one of the biggest complaints I have with AEW is that everybody just does too much. There's so many moves and so little meaning behind any of them. And of course, this match suffered because of it, but I tried to tune that out to kind of see the story behind it. Everything was great. Everything was going fine so far, and then there was a pretty decent heat spot. I would have liked for the Dark Order to have cheated a little bit more, but it was fine. But then, in come the backslap tags. After backslap tag, after backslap tag, after backslap tag, and it never stopped. The backslap tag counter of this show was in the hundreds.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
Why is it that you do not like the backslap tag?
Because you can... Back when there were rules to professional wrestling, in the territory days, that didn't count as a tag. You were slapping the dude's back. A tag was hand-on-hand contact, visible by the referee, that signified a tag. So you could do a blind tag while still extending the hand, and I think FTR did it a couple times on theirs, where they actually like raised the hand like on a backdrop or something like that, and they raised the hand and they were able to get the tag. It was still a blind tag so that they didn't see them, but it was not the cheap way of getting a tag of just, let me slap you on the back. Oh, I guess I'm in now. It's like... It's
very much a trend.
It's lazy.
Not
it's laziness.
Doing things to make him look like a sport and just doing a cheap way to make a tag.
It's just laziness. It's. I think part of it is lack of education, and part of it is just laziness. Because we get backslap tags in WWE too. It's something that has just become a part of the vernacular, and I really wish they wouldn't do that. And yes, I first was exposed to that by our Lord and Savior Jim Cornette. But the more you see these kinds of things, the more they irritate you. Because you can see...
Is there any circumstance where you're okay with a backslap tag?
Not really, no. Now that I've been watching, I mean, this is kind of the result also, not only of just listening to Corny, but also going through the territory deep dive that I've been mentioning from months and months and months, how I've been watching Old School Mid-South and Mid-Atlantic and all these old school professional wrestling gigs. If there was a blind tag, you never saw somebody just casually slap somebody's back. They always found a way to get the hand available to tag. It adds to the art. It keeps rules in play. I just want to see rules, Sky. I just want rules, and I want them enforced. And that was another thing I hated about this show, is how useless referees are. And
don't remind me.
And I'm going to remind you, because that's actually where we are. So there was a pretty decent set of heat that 3 and 4 got on to Isaiah Cassidy before finally he tagged in Mark Quinn for the comeback. It was a pretty decently hot tag. The crowd was happy with it. Then they just started doing shit. The comeback was pretty good. He wasn't fed that smoothly, but still then the ref became useless, and then everybody got in the ring and started doing double teams on each other, and this is, of course, where I start to tune out. And they get more heat. They get a little more heat because they start doing double team moves to John Silver and Alex Reynolds. They start doing some double team moves, bunch of false finishes, and I wrote down here word for word, this is why the Bucks shouldn't be in charge of anything, because now we have entered the stunt show. And it became a stunt show after the comeback, which was pretty decent. And if they had just... Then, the finish of this was they do a double team move, does Dark Order number 3 and 4, and then finally Mark Quinn gets a punch, knocks one out, and then they do their big finishing cutter move, where they do that big cutter. It's almost like a 3D, but off the top. I can't even explain exactly how it is, but it's a cool move. It's honestly a very cool move and a good finisher, and I wish it finished more matches. And that got the 1, 2, 3, and Private Party won. And if they had just taken all of those Dark Order double team moves out, which was a solid 2.5 additional minutes, maybe more, this match would have been really good. This is the first evidence of there was a good match wedged in between a bunch of bullshit. And we're going to see that more and more as this show goes on.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's also one funny thing I want to mention with this as well, and then we will get to both of our contributions to this. Tony Schiavone and Excalibur talk about how they're putting over like how we're all wearing masks, everybody's social distancing, and the very next shot is 7 dudes crammed in against each other right at the barricade, no masks, like nothing apart. None of that. So it's like, if you're going to social distance, you can't have your next camera angle be a bunch of dudes not doing anything you're promoting. That was... I don't care if you transition between that and the stands and then those fans, but immediately right after that, it's like, ooh, it wasn't a good look.
Like, this show very much felt like it was amateur hour.
No doubt.
Everything about it was just amateur hour.
It's indie.
Everything looked like guys who didn't know what the hell they were doing, trying to book a wrestling show.
Mm-hmm.
And that is evidence with the next match that we need to talk about, which is the cinematic match.
Now, we introduced JR. He comes in, there's like the applause, he sits down, he's like, hello, Yellow Jacket.
JR and his ugly-ass yellow shirt.
You know why he did that? You know why he wore that?
Why?
Because they wanted to make the commentators look like the colors of AEW.
Oh my God.
That is the only reason they made him wear that shirt, I guarantee you.
Oh, wait, hold on. AEW logo is black. Okay, so that's Excalibur. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, damn it. Color coordinated, damn it.
That was the only reason why. Anyway, so then we move on to the main show.
I just realized that Tony Schiavone was wearing a gray jacket.
Yes, he was.
Oh.
Yes, he was. So the main show starts up, and they start the first 5 minutes of airtime with going through the whole card. Couldn't they have just started a match? Oh, wait. No, they couldn't, because their first match was... I'm going to try and keep my cool here. It was, and I'll let you do the rant on this one, because I want to say stuff, but here's what happened. They promote the tooth and nail match from Britt Baker and Big Swole. What a name. And it is a tooth and nail match, and it starts with Tony and JR and Excalibur commentating over a cinematic match that was very obviously a pre-tape, and they're live commentating a cinematic match to open this show. And I was so offended that they would have the balls to do this, I said in all caps, just no, and I skipped the whole thing. I didn't even bother to watch it. There was too much to see. I was not going to give this the light of day. Did I miss anything?
No, you fucking did not. So...
Did you watch this?
Remember when... No, I did not watch this shit. But I want to say something about it.
Yes, please do.
So, remember when Lucha Underground came out and they did their version of cinematic matches?
Yes.
And what did you like about those cinematic matches from Lucha Underground?
It wasn't that the matches were cinematic, it was more that the cutscenes were more of that dramatic TV show style. It was a different different format, but it was more encapsulating, and everybody really... There was no debate that it was a TV show that used wrestling to tell its story, so you were allowed to give that the benefit of the doubt on that basis.
But there was storytelling, right? There were elements of a plot, and
stuff that
was happening.
Very much so. A lot of intermingling storylines.
WWE and AEW do not know how to do cinematic matches.
No, they do not.
They do not know how to do it in the style of Lucha Underground. They are not susceptible of doing their own. And AEW looks worse because their cinematic matches production is not at the level of WWE's.
And
WWE, why I would like a WWE cinematic match more than AEW.
And WWE cinematic matches, production-wise, are terrible.
Yes.
As we've discussed.
But Do you want me to explain the finish to you, and then I'll move on to my really big rant for this?
Go for it. Because all I saw, the last thing I saw was when I came back into the thing was Britt Baker screaming in a dentist chair. That's all I got.
So the point of the match was to knock out your opponent by any means necessary. And the finish is that Big Swole is thrown into the dentist chair. And Britt Baker has a needle with Novocaine in it. And she's trying to put the Novocaine into Britt Baker so that she will get numb so she can put anesthetic. And Britt Baker goes for the needle. She misses. She hits her own leg, and her leg gets numb. And then there's Reba. You know that Reba was involved in this.
Yeah, after she was finished with her most recent album and her TV deal.
But Reba is screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God," because Britt Baker hit herself with the Novocaine after missing Big Swole, who was in the dentist chair. And did I forget to mention that Reba, while she's saying, "Oh my God," has a banana peel on her head because she was thrown in a garbage dumpster earlier. and then Big Swole gives Reba the diploma for Britt Baker. Reba holds it up to her face, and then Big Swole punches into the frame. It wasn't like a cool thing where she threw it at Reba, Reba caught it, and then she punched her. No, she handed it to Reba. Reba held it up so that she could be in position, and then Big Swole punches right through the frame. And then the nitrous. And let me ask you something, Sean. What do you think Bullet Bill Armstrong, is it Bill or Bob?
It's Bullet Bob, you uncultured twat burger. How dare you?
This show.
That man was just recently deceased, and I just talked about him last week, sir.
My apologies. I've lost a couple of brain cells.
Road Dogg is going to come after you now.
I know.
You've just burned the bridge with the Armstrong family ever showing up on this podcast. That is not fair.
Okay, first off, my apologies to the Armstrong family. Second, do you think that if you showed the cinematic match to Bullet's Bob Armstrong, he would be happy about it?
I don't think
What about Kamala? Or what about Mr. Wrestling 2?
I think both Bob and 2 probably would have shut it off at about the same time I did, which was as she was walking into the dentist's office, and that would have been the end of that.
Like, the guys who
I get your point.
Years working the territories, day in and day out, sometimes working multiple matches on a certain day if they have that many shows, going from small town to small town, trying to work to keep up the integrity of the professional wrestling business, to have these three women and the company that helped them enable them create one of the worst pieces of shit I've ever seen in my entire life. These three women can fuck off for all I care.
I like Britt Baker, but I do not like the idea of this.
No. She is an active participant. It is her dentist's office. She was involved in this, and she agreed with it. She can fuck off.
So, I mean, you also got to kind of blame Tony for this, too. Tony Khan, that is, not Tony Schiavone. I mean, because this was...
We will get the Tony Khan.
This is another one of those things where they're just trying to be WWE. They don't need to do this cinematic stuff. They never needed to do this cinematic stuff. And it just... but I skipped this because I was not going to get involved. And then I have to get into the Bucks versus the Jurassic Express. That's what we're going to actually start out with. Okay. Marco Stunt, why? Why is he still here? Did you hear how much JR was taking the piss out of Marco Stunt during the entire match of this debacle?
I had the volume on as low as possible, so I did not have to hear commentary.
JR was just, I mean, the entire show, this was something consistent with JR. JR was just shitting on everything. I mean, everything. From top to bottom. He was just, it was like, that was my biggest problem with the commentary. Is like, Excalibur says a whole bunch of indie names for indie moves that are not those types of things, and he's not being taken seriously because he's wearing a goddamn mask on the commentary booth. JR is so just defeated and phoning it in and taking in the paycheck that he's just fucking taking the piss out of everything at this point. Doesn't matter left, right, up, down, square. And Tony is, you know, one Scooby snack away from a full box, just completely either just doesn't care or just stoned out of his mind, or I don't know. I do not know what is going on with Tony Schiavone, but the commentary was just awful. The whole match and the whole show. But Young Bucks Jurassic Express, what did you think?
So, I don't watch the Young Bucks. And the reason why I don't watch the Young Bucks is that once you've seen one of their matches, you have seen all of their matches. They don't
because they suck.
Original. They don't do anything original. They don't do anything creative. They just do a Young Bucks style match, and they have other guys wrestle for them.
I wouldn't even classify this as wrestling either.
No, I wouldn't.
This is another... I agree. This is another stunt show.
By the way, I do want to say there are a couple of things I want to talk about. So I watched this show on Saturday, and I was watching with a couple of people who are AEW fans, and I will mention their input at one point or another because it's really important to listen to them. And Sean knows these guys, so he may or may not laugh at some of the things that they say. But when I was watching this match, my first instant reaction was Luchasaurus does not look as impressive as I thought he would.
Luchasaurus...
And the guys were having to try and explain why Luchasaurus is awesome, and all I could see was a fat guy in a mask.
Luchasaurus, when he was in Lucha Underground, was quite good for what they used him in. I think Luchasaurus would be better not marred by being associated with Marco Stunt. But I think that he's green, no pun intended, obviously, because, you know, the mask. He's just awkward. He moves
He's a generic,
awkwardly.
awkward, big guy.
He's not bad. He just moves awkwardly. And this match, here's what I got out of this match. First of all, Matt Jackson really does not sell anything. If you watch him, it doesn't matter what he takes, he will barely leave his feet. He will find a way to just like walk around or stagger around and then get out of the ring and do his next stunt. You know, he really does not sell at all. I mean, none of these guys do. This was just all... Most of this was just all a bunch of shit. There was nothing to this match. It was, like you said, it's just another Young Bucks match, which was just a whole bunch of super contrived stunts that everybody moved to next. There was a really clever, super contrived, but a really clever super kick counter to Luchasaurus to prevent a tag, which I thought was nice. At one point, Tony Schiavone said, "I love stiff, man." So just go ahead and take that for what it's worth. Matt gets hit with basically a black mass and staggers and doesn't leave his feet. There was a lot of leg slapping on this show. Once again, there was a comeback by Luchasaurus, but then he got beaten down, and then Jungle Boy made a comeback. So there were two comebacks, and to me, just in my personal preference, I like seeing Shine the Babyface, heat spot, comeback, finish. Real simple. Once you start getting another comeback, you've already lost interest in a lot of things, and this match went on way too long. It was just a bunch of moves, and then Young Bucks did every move ever conceived in the history of professional wrestling, thus ruining the rest of the show for everybody else and destroying all the meaning of all the moves that could have possibly been done the entire night, which is pretty typical for your residential best tag team in the world at a whopping 390 pounds. What did you think?
I don't like watching the Young Bucks matches.
Me either.
Because whenever you watch them, you can tell that they just planned a series of moves that they were going to do in order There's no flow. There's no story. You're right about a heat spot, but it didn't really affect me because Luchasaurus sucked at the heat spots.
Yeah,
And
he
then,
cannot sell.
My biggest insult for this was watching Luchasaurus get knocked down by the Jacksons. This guy's supposed to be 6'5" and like almost 300 pounds. The Jacksons are not even 200 each, and he goes down. And
but Sky,
I thought it was shitty that he went down at all.
But Sky, the Jacksons are superheroes. They have superhuman strength packed into their small, little, minuscule, flabby 30-year-old, but they're still called young bodies.
They should just be called the Bucks at this point because they ain't young anymore, especially because one's losing his hair.
And you know that they're calling that they have a book coming out called Killing the Business. How they went from backyard wrestling to here. What a story.
Yeah. And then Luchasaurus goes down. He's lying down, and then he does the Undertaker rise up, laughing, and I was like, "Do not disrespect the Undertaker, you Lucha piece of shit."
Well, in all fairness to Taker, though, he doesn't have the rights to that move because Kane used it too. That's not one of the things I have an issue with.
To waste it on a nothing match. It's supposed to be a dramatic moment when Undertaker rises up and he gets a second win and he starts beating the piss out of someone.
Oh,
and
I know.
Luchasaurus didn't do that.
Well, but you also got to remember that the Bucks think that that they're having the match of the night.
The only good
that's
thing
why
the Bucks did
this
was
happens.
Super kick. The only good thing that the Bucks did was super kick Marco Stunt.
I popped for that so hard. That was like, you know what? You almost baby-faced me there, Mr. Jackson.
But then they had to ruin it by doing 2 or 3 different pile driver moves, and I actually have this in my notes. How many finishers do the fucking Young Bucks have?
None. Because nothing finishes anything.
Apparently their finisher is the Meltzer driver, but you wouldn't know that by the number of different moves that they pulled out.
And instead they did a double knee to the head, and that's what did it, which thank God it did. This match...
Also, did you notice that they missed a lot of their kicks? Like, the Young Bucks are most known for their super kicks, and they missed a lot of them by putting it on the ear and not even on the chin.
Yeah, because they're more interested in slapping their thigh and playing wrestling rather than actually making it any of it look any good. That's what they do. This match went way too long. It was another Bucks match, and I'm ready to move on because I'm already getting sick to my stomach. All right.
Oh, just wait until you have to talk about the next match.
Oh, then came the Casino Battle Royale. I said it at the first time they did this gimmick, and I'm going to say it now. This is a dumb gimmick for a Battle Royal.
Now, may I actually counter your point?
No, it's a dumb concept for a Battle Royal. No, go ahead.
I actually think it's a fun concept because it's different from a regular Battle Royale as long as you book it correctly. This was not booked correctly.
Did they do that? No, I didn't think so. Well, the one thing they did this time that was better than the last time. The last time they did this, whenever the card, whatever it was, diamonds or clubs or whatever, whenever they announced that, instead of giving everybody an entrance, they just hoarded all 5 people into the ring at once. So nobody got an entrance. It was like Survivor Series last year where they did the NXT, and here's NXT's people, and then here's Raw's people, and here's SmackDown's people, so that nobody looks important at all. That was last year. This year they at least gave some entrances. Another thing too I wanted to mention, everyone except Cody's, Jericho's, and I think maybe 1 or 2, I can't remember. The music, the entrance themes for these guys all suck.
They sound like
Name something interesting that you heard from the music.
I can't.
Yeah.
All the music sounded like garage punk rock.
That was not that somebody had made with like a computer software. It was just they were bad. All of them were bad. And Justin Roberts. Go ahead.
No, you go first.
Justin Roberts. I have the perfect explanation for how I feel for Justin Roberts. Justin Roberts is a glitchy robot that had water poured on top of him. Go back and listen to every time he over-dramatizes somebody. It's like the YouTube video is buffering in his head. And there's this really long wait, and it's like the exact same sound, and it's like this sputtering, like it's glitching out, and then he finally gets through the rest of the name. That's what is happening here. Just particularly, go back and look when he does Jon Moxley, and then you could see it on his face. His face looks like he's disturbed, like he doesn't know what's going on. It's hysterical.
I have to say this. Justin Roberts and his fucking bow tie. Way to look like a kid that just got the opportunity to talk in front of the class.
Justin Roberts is a weenie. I mean, he's a glitchy robot weenie.
Who's worse, him or Greg Hamilton?
I would say they are both bad for the same reason. Hamilton.
They're both bad for the same reason, but I will give the edge to Greg Hamilton because at least as a man, he wears a fucking regular tie and not a bow tie. That makes him look like a loser.
It wasn't even that exciting of a bow tie. If it was a fun looking, it was a fun bow tie, that would have been one thing, but it was just a regular bow tie.
Yeah.
But
anyways, so do we want to go entrant by entrant, or do we just want to talk about?
No, I'm just going to talk about this because I just wrote some highlights. Taz is great on commentary. I forgot how much I liked Taz on commentary when he wants to work and he wants to try, and he's really doing a good thing and he's advocating his guys. He was the highlight of this entire commentary all night was Taz. He brought some life into an otherwise dying, frail group of men.
Honestly, Taz should have been on commentary the entire night.
It would have been more exciting. Ortiz is annoying as hell, I've determined. There's something about him I do not like. That's probably why he's a heel. But he's just annoying. I don't have the right words for this. They have so many factions in this company. Why?
It's very much from Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks being in Japan for too long and taking from the Japanese style of having everyone either in a tag team or a stable. It's not for the worst as long as you clearly define who is with who, but it's so fluid. And none of the factions feel important.
And none really have much of an identity other than like, hey, we're a bunch of people. I guess that's all we got. Then,
like, remember when the Inner Circle debuted and their identity and how quickly it's gone?
It really is, and a lot of that is because there have been so many more groups. So who cares about the Inner Circle? Because everybody has an Inner Circle. They should just call this Clickville. But then Chuck Taylor and Trent, just Trent, one name Trent, do their stupid hug when they do the smash zoom on the camera that I don't get why people like. This is supposed to be a show in the wrestling context, which I know is really hard for AEW. But in a wrestling context, don't you want people to be mad at each other? I don't care how good of a friend you are. The best friends is a bad gimmick.
Not only that, but these guys are fighting for a world title shot, and they hug in the middle of a battle royale.
This is their tag team. Yes, I get that. But the hug isn't even the worst part. The hug is dumb. The smash zoom out to the wide cam makes it worse. It makes it even worse.
And I was gonna praise the camera crew because they didn't do the constant Kevin Dunn camera cut, and then they do the instant zoom and zoom out for this stupid gimmick.
Yeah.
And then Chuck Taylor gets eliminated almost instantly because he got distracted.
Good.
And here's the thing. I was talking to the AEW friends I mentioned, and I asked, why the fuck is this happening? And then they said, give the people what they want. I replied, stupid baby faces?
Yeah, I
Because
didn't
that's what this
understand.
was.
It's who wants this? Except for people who are just AEW fans, loyal AEW fans, and don't care either way. Then Sean Spears, I enjoyed taking a little side trip over the commentary. Except, did you notice this? They had a headset ready for him to show up. It wasn't like he took one from somebody and looked like a badass. It was like, oh, look at this headset that I very easily know, because like as if there was more people here. So they set that up, and then Matt Sydal would have been
Oh my God.
was a nice Joker, but I feel so bad for this dude. I like Matt. I like this dude. He's one of those guys who does a lot of the spotty stuff, but can still work a match. He was great in Lucha Underground when he was there. He's had his moments. And then he gets up to the top to do a shooting star, and his leg falls, and what a flop for a debut. This poor bastard.
So, when I was watching this, my instant reaction was, who is this guy? And then I quickly remembered because he looked like Evan Bourne.
Fancy that.
And then I watched him get up to the top rope, and his right foot trips off the rope because it's too hot in Florida.
That was.
And then he falls on his back. His foot is the only thing that hits the guy that he was supposed to hit the shooting star on.
Oh, the poor. I feel bad.
I will say he took the best bump of the entire show.
It was a good bump, but still, what a brutal way to debut. Sonny Kiss, I don't know whether you saw this. Jake Hager, the guy who's won MMA fights, is eliminated by Sonny Kiss, who I don't care
My first reaction to Sonny Kiss entering the ring was, who let this woman come into the ring? And then I realized it was Sonny Kiss.
Because
I've never seen Sonny Kiss before. I didn't know who he was. So when I saw him, I was like, who is this woman?
And I mean this in no disrespect intended to Sonny. I'm sure wonderful person. However, it's a crap gimmick. It's a crap gimmick. It's just not going to get over. I understand. I don't mind you. You do whatever you want to make you happy. But in the professional wrestling context, it's a bad gimmick. And it's not going to get over.
Right.
And that person eliminated the MMA fighter.
Well, Jake Hager doesn't have any stock anymore. But hey, at least on Wednesday Dynamite yesterday, him and Chris Jericho beat Sonny Kiss and Joey Janela. That makes up for it, right?
Oh, joy. Right? Joy. I'm
no,
so much happier now. And now, this was then came the fun, probably the most entertaining part of the show. I know that you were upset about this. I thought it was hysterical. I now present to you Senile Men on Porch. Wrestling match happening on the cameras. All of a sudden, the baseball park down the street, or right next to it, starts launching a fuck ton of fireworks. Kaboom, 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 firework, 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 firework. And then, here is the dialogue from the commentators, and I quote, JR says, in case you're wondering what that noise is, and Taz interrupts JR and says, it's catering. There's an issue with catering. JR explained there was a baseball stadium next door, and then Tony Schiavone says, well, it is Memorial Day weekend, right? Unpack that, folks.
Unintentionally, he was the funniest part of this whole thing.
Unpack that whole thing between Taz going, in case you're wondering what that noise is, going, yeah, it's catering. There's an issue at catering. And Tony just completely botching the weekend, thinking it's May, but it's actually the first week of September.
I don't blame Tony because quarantine has gone on forever.
It was just hysterical. It was just so funny.
But this whole fireworks thing, could you not tell the baseball team, hey, don't shoot the fireworks during one of our matches? do it during one of the bumpers.
Well, you never know, Sky. That Little League game might have been drawing better numbers than AEW was.
No one's drawing better numbers
on
right
local
now
access on local access television. They might be getting 1 million viewers in Jacksonville. Cable television is still alive in some respect. That Little League game could have been outdrawing AEW nationally.
Viewers on past Wednesday.
I'm just saying.
Also, but it's so Bush League to have fireworks from another place go off. If this was WWE and Vince McMahon was doing an outdoor arena and fireworks from another place went off, he would have sent Brock Lesnar to go and F5 the entire baseball team.
Well, not anymore. He's not under contract, allegedly.
Okay, fine. We'll send Randy Orton and he'll RKO everybody.
So, and then, speaking of Bush League, Brian Cage pulls out a body bag and fills it with thumbtacks. Why were the thumbtacks necessary? Especially because all those tacks just spilled out onto the arena and then hurt everybody else in the match, as they all tried to avoid thumbtacks. Then they put Darby Allin in the body bag with the thumbtacks and zip it up. And then Brian Cage power bombs the bag outside onto the... By the way, did you notice it was like shag carpet that was on those steps?
It was.
So all those bumps that people took to the outside that they were trying to sell were more painful than the arena. They were not. But then Darby Allin, he had to have landed straight on his head.
No doubt.
I mean, that was so irresponsible. I don't know whether... I'm sure Darby's the one who came up with that. I would like to think Brian Cage would not have had that idea. It was...
But...
Why? Just why was this a thing? In the middle of a world title battle royal.
Childhood hero was Jeff Hardy, and he wants to kill himself because that's what he likes. Like, he doesn't feel alive unless he feels pain.
Yeah, but Jeff Hardy didn't put himself in a thumbtack body bag, for Christ's sakes. He wrestled a match and got his ass beat. And put through tables and jumped off ladders. He did daredevil tactics to other people in the vein of winning a match. Darby Allin's just like, oh, just throw me in a body bag and beat me up because I'm edgy. Yeah.
Right. Like here's the thing. Darby Allin, you are a hardcore wrestler. That's fine. Like, people can like that kind of stuff. I personally don't, but that's just my personal opinion. But why in the fuck would you put yourself in that much harm's way? Being powerbombed is one thing because at least you can look down and see where you're going to get powerbombed so you can adjust for it. Being in a body bag means you can't look at the ground, so you can't judge. That means you have to completely trust that the person that's powerbombing you isn't going to powerbomb you so hard and in the wrong place that it's going to hurt you. Did you notice that after he was powerbombed, he did not get up for several minutes?
Yeah, because the doctors helped him out, and Tony even mentioned it.
Out of the body bag and help him to the back.
Tony even mentioned it. He's like, there's an injury here, guys. And then they just like went right by that. And it's like, oh, well, Darby's paralyzed, but let's finish the rest of the match. And then the fucking finish. This was dumb. So Eddie Kingston, apparently, did you ever hear that Eddie Kingston was afraid of snakes?
No, I didn't.
And I love Eddie Kingston. That's why I booked him on ACPW. And I loved Eddie Kingston regardless of this finish. I liked the final two of Lance Archer and Eddie Kingston. I like both those guys. And so I was happy to see that those two were the final two. Then Jake takes a bag that was supposed to have a snake in it, that very obviously did not have a snake in it, and starts like shoving the bag up towards Eddie Kingston. And Eddie tries to, like, kick Jake. I think that, honestly, Jake might have jump-started that a little earlier than he should have.
Yeah, he jumped his cue. So Eddie Kingston had to kick him off, like, not yet, not yet.
It was hard to tell. I mean, I didn't see it upon first glance. I had to go back and watch it. But that...
No, they were mentioning it on the Jim Cornette podcast, that Jake jumped his cue.
And for those of you who are keeping score at home, ladies and gentlemen, we do not take everything that Jim Cornette says and just copy and paste it onto this podcast and our opinions. because there's a lot that Jim says that I do not agree with. And so these reflections are purely our own and are no way influenced by things that Jim Cornette might have said, even though we may give credit to Jim Cornette for saying them before we got the chance to say them. Anyway, so then he just shoves a snake up towards Eddie Kingston. He starts acting kind of scared, and then Archer finally nakes him down, and Archer wins the Battle Royal. I don't mind Archer and Jake being in the main event at all, but you have to remember that Lance Archer once wrestled 9.5 minutes with Marco Stunt. And I bet you didn't know that. I bet you didn't know that.
No, I didn't, and I don't want to.
So as much as I would like to be excited about Archer being the one who's going to compete for the title next, I don't think he can beat a champion if he goes 9 minutes with Marco Stunt.
Plus, the other thing, too, is that this matchup telegraphed the end of the main event. Like, my first reaction when I watched this was, there's no way MJF is going to win.
You know, I didn't think about that at the time because I watched this over the course of several days in order to keep my sanity in check. But you're probably right. That probably would have been the first thing, which is kind of the detriment of having a number one contenders battle royal before having the world title match. You know?
Like, when, like, for example, when WWE does Money in the Bank, they usually do the Money in the Bank ladder match after the championship title match.
Yeah.
And I understand why, because you don't want to spoil the main of your title match unless you're going to do like a I don't know, a title change.
Or yeah, unless you're doing like an instant cash in that night. You know, which has been done.
They put Money in the Bank in the main event because that way you don't spoil your world title match.
And yeah, which again, I didn't even think of it at the time because I was watching this in a little bit of a different context, and I think I actually took a break after this match because it was just a lot.
But one of my friends who I'm starting to debate whether or not I want him to be my friend anymore. But one of my friends who was an AEW fan said, and I quote, "This was the best Casino Battle Royal match."
Out of the two they've had? What kind of match was that? What kind of comment is that?
This is the best. Like, you're not even going to consider the future ones? Maybe the future ones will be better.
Well, if we even get future ones.
I know I'm saying what I'm saying, but whatever.
No, I'm with you, but I can already tell we're getting burnt out doing the review, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more matches to go. And
at least the next one is pretty short because Matt Hardy died.
Well, Matt Hardy, who is one of my favorites of all time. He's in my top 5. And I know that always throws people, but Matt Hardy is in my top 5. Nearly dies against Sammy Guevara in another gimmick match. This was a last man standing, but I forget what they called it. Broken rules or whatever. It was.
I don't remember.
So Matt starts on the football field and calls for Sammy Guevara. Sammy shows up in a golf cart. They punch a little bit. Then they go up and they do their little self-promotion of, "Oh, here are the masks for all the people that we're not letting in." And the amount of virtue signaling from AEW all night was a little nauseating. Not gonna lie. But then, speaking of nauseating, then Matt and Sammy get up on one of those crane lifts. Well, it was like those zipper crane lifts, and I don't know which one of them operated it. I think it was Sammy. They clearly knew how to do it. Which means that it's either the easiest thing to know how to do up and down, or this was not a spontaneous thing. What? Something in AEW's contrived? Boom. Explosion. Then, speaking of explosion, Sammy Guevara spears Matt Hardy near two tables that they were supposed to go through, but they miss entirely, so only their bottom half hits, and Matt Hardy's head slams against the concrete. And it went real downhill from here.
So, when I was watching this, my first reaction was, they just killed Matt Hardy on national TV. And he was out.
He was out. Lights out.
He was out for a good minute. And they were doing the counting. Audrey Edwards, who was the referee, was doing the counting. She got to 8. And then Sammy Guevara picked him up. And when he picked up Matt Hardy, he did not look right.
He didn't move.
Matt Hardy tried to throw a punch, and then he was starting to lead Sammy Guevara somewhere else. And then he does a tumbleweed cartwheel with Sammy Guevara. And that was really the spot that I grew concerned. Yeah, and she threw up the X. They called it. The bell rang. And on the whole, this was bad. And I'm glad that they ended it.
But they didn't.
What are you talking about? I thought that ended the match.
They didn't.
They got the doctor there. They checked him.
Well, the doctor must... I don't know what the conversation was back behind. It was probably him and Tony Khan going, Matt, are you okay? And Matt, of course, being a stubborn professional wrestler, goes, yeah, I'm fine, knowing he's out of it. You know, I was like, either Matt is the Leonardo da Vinci of selling, or this is really super risky territory. So Matt goes crawling around after about a minute and a half of them saying, oh, well, this shit happens, so we're just happy everyone's safe. Matt goes around, he finds Sammy, they do some more punches, and then what would have been...
The bell rings to restart the match.
They restart the match, and they go through this, they start climbing the scaffolding, and then there's this giant construction paper box that's very obviously a crash pad that Sammy takes a regular bump through. Matt Hardy, every time you see him on the camera, he's got this glazed over look in his eye. And the count is to 10. Matt raises his hand, and that's the end of the match. Again. And why in God's green earth would you restart this match? Let Matt go away for a while. If Matt walks away from AEW, it's going to do his career some good.
Okay. So, this upset me greatly.
It upset a lot of people.
Because you're taking a wrestling veteran who is well respected in the industry, and you are taking him and putting himself at risk for permanent brain damage because you need to finish the match. This was not worth it. Call off the match, call it a no contest, have Sammy Guevara brag that he sent Matt Hardy to the hospital. When Matt is healthy, have him come back and they finish the feud. You don't have to do this. But they decided to take all the risk of having Matt Hardy, who is clearly concussed or at least out of his mind, climb a 15-foot scaffold, and Sammy Guevara had to help Matt Hardy climb up the scaffolding.
Yep.
And if Matt Hardy had fallen off and landed on his head, it would have looked even worse, just so they could get a contrived finish on a stunt crash pad.
On a construction paper stunt crash pad. I mean, did you see how thin the boards were on that?
This was bullshit. This was fucking bullshit. And Tony Khan and the doctor should be ashamed of themselves. They should have known that Matt Hardy would have continued the match because Matt Hardy is a professional athlete and he's going to do whatever it takes to finish whatever he starts.
Yeah.
They should have done it and stopped it for his health and his safety. It would have at least made sense and no fan would have been angry about it. But instead they put Matt Hardy's life at risk. And Matt Hardy, who has already had problems walking, it's like watching Mick Foley all over again. Well, what's going to happen to Darby Allin if he continues to be in these hardcore matches? And they're going to injure themselves like they did with Dr. Britt Baker.
Oh, we should have him in a tooth and nail match. Solution right there. Boom. Problem solved.
Was bullshit.
No.
And to make this even worse, did you hear what happened on Wednesday on Dynamite?
He went and like broke kayfabe and just started talking about that whole thing, right?
He apologized to his family and to his fans. He apologized. He has nothing to apologize for.
Well, I don't know about that. Because I almost guarantee you that it was probably Matt Hardy's idea to do that spot to begin with.
I mean, the spot was dangerous, but everything after He doesn't have to apologize for anything.
Well,
if anything, he was just kissing up to AEW to make sure that they didn't look bad by saying, "Oh, I'm okay, I'm okay."
And what's messed up about it too is like the stipulation gave them the perfect out to actually finish it like that. If I lose, I walk. Well, he couldn't walk because he got concussed. So he wasn't carted out, but Sammy still wins. Matt could take the time to go back and recover and then come back later to get revenge on Sammy. And you could use that Sammy's heel to continue that going. You had the perfect out to stop the match where it was. I don't think there was a need for Matt to win that. I mean,
honestly, even if you wanted to have, you could just stop the match, have it declared a no contest, have Sammy Guevara get heat for the situation, and then build to an even bigger match.
But
and
this is a mark we're talking about.
To put everyone's risk at health. And you want to know what one of my friends said the day after the show when we were talking about it, and how I was talking about how angry.
Battery low. Please charge now.
What'd he say?
Like, he said, so I was talking about how angry I was, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I said that Matt Hardy and AEW should be ashamed of themselves. And then my friend says, I mean, AEW is not the only promoter to have pulled that shit.
True.
And I was like, that is not a fucking excuse.
It's not an excuse,
the match.
And it's not the point.
It misses the point completely. Sure, AEW is not the only company to have had an injury happen in the middle of a match. And yes, there's a certain company in Connecticut who I can think of who has done that, where they had a wrestler get an injury and they finished the match.
That's happened more than once.
But no, use that as an excuse. Stop the match, get everyone out, make sure they're healthy. That is the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, the wrestler's health is the most important thing. And AEW failed Matt Hardy in that stance. Fuck Tony Khan.
Well, unfortunately, Tony Khan is no more experienced or adept at booking or realizing this type of thing than you or I are, Sky. And that's really evidenced by this whole show tonight, is that Tony Khan knows no more about it than us. And it's very apparent that the only difference between him and us is billions and billions of dollars that his father has. But no, I agree. There was no excuse for this.
Billionaire's son.
There was no excuse for this. But then we try to move on to...
But we couldn't, because this put on a damper for the rest of the night, because everyone was talking about Matt Hardy. And
this did hurt the show.
About the Matt Hardy situation in other matches.
This did really hurt the show. I will admit that too. It especially if you watched it live, I'm sure. This was rough. But then we get something that's not too bad. And this was the women's championship match, the AEW women's championship match, Hikaru Shida versus the NWA women's champion Thunder Rosa. What did you think?
So, I stepped away from this show for a good 15 minutes because I needed the vent because of how angry I was about Matt Hardy.
Fair.
So, I caught this match halfway.
Fair.
And then I rewatched it later on. I thought this was the best women's match I have seen from any company in a while.
Really?
Like, I really liked this match. Like, it was a really good match, at least for me.
This was... I think that there was good things in this. I didn't really have any big major issues in this, but I did... There were some things I noticed that did kind of take me out of the moment. First of all, they start by pie-facing each other a bunch of times. I would have rather them just taken straight-up punches or pushed or just shoves. Like, the pie-face thing, it just didn't work for me. I think that ribbons, as far as entrances, are really, really indie. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of... Because who's throwing those ribbons? Oh, fans? Oh, cool. I'm just not a big fan of that, of those at all. JR...
Well, you don't like the extravagant entrance stuff? Solo cup.
I don't mind extravagance if it fits the context of the person. You know, the solo cups, you're just pouring down Solo cups on people. That's not. How does that identify anything with the people? It doesn't make you invested in the gimmicks themselves, and neither do the ribbons. And like, I'm more of a fan of the pyro than the ribbons. That's all I'm saying. I'm just not a huge fan of the ribbons. They had some good exchanges. Excalibur made sure to ensure us that we knew that Thunder Rosa was also the international princess champion in whatever Indie Japan show gave out that title. Excalibur was brutal in this match. The commentary, again, the commentary was really tough on this. Then, another thing, this was another match where the ref proved to be useless. They went outside for like 90 seconds or more, no count. There was no disqualification with anything involving the chair that they pulled out. The commentary, I wrote the commentary is rough 3 times over the course of my notes here. The comeback was okay. The double run, then they did this thing where they both looked at each other and then like ran to opposite sides, like they both hit the ropes on opposite sides, but there was like this moment that they paused that kind of my commentary on it was the double run to the ropes breaks my kayfabe. And I don't like when my kayfabe is broken on an involuntary basis. Then Sheeta's comeback was okay. I didn't hate it. Once again, the commentary was... JR called out Hikaru Shida. There was that Death Valley Driver that Thunder Rosa did on Hikaru Shida. Do you remember that?
I do.
JR called out Shida holding the rope to make sure that she landed it right, which I thought was not doing her any service. Even if the camera caught it, you shouldn't be pointing that kind of thing out to be like, oh yeah, she's helping herself. You know, I think JR partly does it to try to help these women get better, but like, it doesn't help when your commentators are shitting on what you're trying to present. At least WWE's commentators try and fail, but they try to pay attention and not just dump on what's going on in the ring. And yeah, well, it's funny because JR does it because all the stuff in the ring is trash, but it's still, even the commentary is the most important part of it. And if you're not taking it seriously because you can't take it seriously, then there's a serious problem across the board.
Not to mention, why doesn't Tony Khan just tell JR, hey, try to talk it up,
Yeah, no, because he's...
And if JR can't talk it up, then get someone else.
Yeah. At this point, I love JR, but this show made me not want to see any more of any of these 3 commentators. Sorry, guys,
I think it's just because they know how... Well, not Excalibur, because Excalibur is generally excited to be here. But JR and Tony Schiavone, they know how shit this is.
I know.
They don't care.
It's
They've
sad.
checked out. They're just...
And honestly, if they were going to try and promote indie wrestling to be the thing, and that was their whole thing, what they should have done is gotten 2 indie commentators and then just like never made the attempt to make it look legitimate from the start. But because Tony and JR had the name recognition, they used them, but I feel bad for them. But now at this point, I kind of don't, because they're not contributing to this show in any way, in a positive way. And then they do a weak hockey fight in the middle of the ring, but there was a really nice superplex. There was a good comeback. This was a long match, and because there was the thing that I felt was missing was that there was no like rise and falls to the mood of the match for the most part. And I like both of these women. I really do. I think Thunder Rosa should have won this personally. But I like Hikaru Shida enough to not be upset with the fact that she still has the title. So all in all, this was pretty good.
My only thing that I didn't like about this match is that Thunder Rosa just came to AEW from the NWA. And I know that the independent scene isn't filled to the brim with women's wrestlers because WWE has taken most of them. But there are still other women's wrestlers that are out there, and they really could have beefed up their division, but it's just... They really need to work on their women's division because Thunder Rosa coming in immediately getting a title shot, and because she lost, now she's going to get the back of the line. So who's the next person to face up against Hikaru Shida?
Well, and the other problem is, it's like they had the opportunity to get so much talent at the start when they were wanting to do this, but they were influenced by Kenny and the Bucks, and to some degree Cody,
Well, Kenny Omega is the person that runs the women's division.
Well, I mean, just in general, too. Like, even with the male talent, they let their friends get involved, and that's the only people who are on this show are friends of the guys who are EVPs, and they're slowly adding more people, but really, at the end of the day, they could have had a talent roster unlike anyone else, and the fact that it took this long for Thunder Rosa to even show up in AEW really tells you all you need to know about the people in charge.
And I also want to say something that was very hypocritical, is that they said at the beginning that they were not going to be like WWE, and they weren't going to hire WWE cast-off just to fill out their roster, because they're going to look to give people who haven't had a shot new opportunity, right? I did a hand count of the AEW roster the day after this show with their websites, and 25% of their roster is former WWE guys. And it did not have Matt Cardona or Miro or Ty Conti on the list, so that percentage probably went up a little bit.
Well, but you'd think, it's kind of a moot point, though, because you'd think that some of those ex-WWE guys would actually know how to work, but the only ones who have proven they can are MJF, who was never there, and FTR, and Cody,
and
Dustin.
And you could argue Cody, but besides those four, I can't think of anyone else.
Yeah, it's Arch is okay. He just the booking of these people when they have so much potential, because I know Brian Cage can work. I've seen him work. I know Ricky Starks can work. I know there's a few other guys there who can work. There's a lot of talent on that show, but they either refuse to work because they want to do their own indie bullshit, or they've been booked to oblivion, so nobody cares, because the guy who's making the book is doing the booking the same way that we're doing ours, and just writing names on sheets of paper with no context and no idea of how to layer these stories, and looking 6 months ahead to where you're going. Everything is short-sighted. It's just... And speaking of short-sighted...
You say that, Sean, but I put a lot of effort into the Hart Foundation Cup. My Hart Foundation Cup storyline began in July, so I was at least planning for this moment to come at least 3 months.
Oh, I was thinking 4 months ahead with ACPW. I mean, I already have my December show pretty much booked. It's just
Same
getting
thing.
there.
Like I have my main event for my December show, which is my season finale booked. But again, that speaks to a bigger point, though, is that all these guys, they just feel pointless and they don't matter. Especially with the next match, which was the 8-man tag.
Speaking of pointless and didn't matter, we got an 8-man team, 8-man tag. The Dark Order, which was Evil Uno, Stu Grayson, Colt Cabana for whatever reason, and Mr. Brody Lee versus the team of QT Marshall, Matt Cardona, Scorpio Sky, and Dustin Rhodes.
So,
why is Colt a part of this gimmick?
Conversations I had with some AEW friends.
I don't, honestly, because it's probably going to make me angrier than just going through this match.
So, no, but you should hear this anyways. So, my first question was, what is the Dark Order? Are they a cult, a business? Are they supernatural?
I have no idea what their gimmick is. I asked that 6 times.
And one of my friends said, yes. And I'm just like, that explains everything and nothing at the same time.
Because they don't even know. They don't know what this gimmick is. Nobody knows what this gimmick is. Most importantly, the talent don't know what this gimmick is. Because it makes no sense.
Like, you could have Brody Lee be a successful cult leader if you gave him some material and people to work with. But they refused. They give him Colt Cabana. The whole point of this match was a storyline involving Brody Lee trying to get Colt Cabana on board as a full member of the Dark Order.
I personally like Colt Cabana. I think that he does some goofy stuff, and I've seen him do goofy stuff, but when he wants to work, he works.
He was not working this match.
He was my favorite part of this match. Because everything else was just bad. Why is Brandy Rhodes there? If Anna Jay knocks you the fuck out with your husband, why would you show up with a group of guys coming to fight? Like, what are you there for? What is the point of having you there? Other than, I'm a chief branding officer, so let me get on TV because I want to be on TV. Name me a valid reason why she was there.
All this was just because the Brandy Rhodes family, the Rhodes family always has to travel together. They can never do anything by themselves. Every match, they have to have a member of the family there.
I think every match, Brandy just wants to get on TV there. And so she's like, I'm coming with you whether you like it or not. And
whatever.
Then
I don't even really want to talk about this match.
Well, I'm gonna zip through it real quick. There was a Bullet Bob Armstrong reference in this match, of course made by JR. Backslap tag count somewhere in the 20s. This was when I was still actually kind of counting. Evil Uno has lost a lot of weight, but he's got a terrible farmer's tan.
No, my first reaction to Evil Uno was, Evil Uno is fat.
He's not even as bad as he was when he started. He lost probably 60 to 70 pounds.
Good for that guy.
He lost a lot of weight. I was like, oh, good for him. But then Uno couldn't keep his boot up for a double team. Did you notice that? He went to put his boot up and then had to lower his leg because I think he got a cramp or something. So they couldn't even do the heel kick for that.
Quick side note, do you think all the weight that Evil Uno lost went to Chris Jericho?
Not all of it, but probably a chunk.
Maybe to his ego, too.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, remember, he worked a lot of that off working at Sturgis. But then, of course, this is yet another tag match that needs a second comeback. Because
the first one wasn't good enough. Because
the first one doesn't count for whatever goddamn reason. And then Brandy shows up again to cause trouble because we just had to get Brandy in. Then JR made a very cringy wardrobe malfunction joke, which got a lot of attention.
When I heard it, I didn't think it was that bad, but then I was just like, no, the context, it still sucks.
It was just cringy. I mean, I understand it was just like in poor taste. I don't think he really meant anything malicious by it. You know, I don't think he's not a pervy old man.
It's the same sense I got from me. It's just drunk, tired grandpa making really stupid jokes.
Yeah, I don't think that this is in any way a reflection of JR's overall. Like, he's not a sexual deviant. I think JR's just being it was just cringy. It was just cringy.
He's just been listening to Jerry Lawler for too long.
Yeah, he was around Jerry for a long time. Then there was a bunch of dives. Then there was some communication. Dark Order was trying to do a double team, but they couldn't communicate correctly. Did you see this? I think Evil Uno was the one holding the guy up and was trying to talk to the other guy. There was this moment where they were trying to figure out what they were supposed to be doing.
It looked like a bunch of guys who had never worked before.
And Dustin Rhodes.
They didn't have any sort of communication, any sort of teamwork. It's just a bunch of guys wrestling and not a stable.
And not even decent wrestling. Brody Lee didn't look anywhere near. He was not the Luke Harper I remember. He was just meh. It was just meh. The hockey fights. I am sick of hockey fights in wrestling. They look so contrived.
Not to mention, they're not even as good as the real hockey fights.
Yeah. I just don't want to see him anymore.
Actual punches.
Yeah, I just don't want to see him anymore. No more hockey fights, wrestling. I'm banning the move. Just like Jericho banned Cornette from watching his podcast, I am banning hockey fights from pro wrestling. Hence, hereforth. And then this 8-man tag with all the dives and all the moves and 2 comebacks ended with a roll-up.
It ended with a roll-up on Colt Cabana looking like a loser because Brody Lee set him up to win the match.
And remember how we were having an issue with making losers look like losers on that other show?
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. This is not exclusive. It's just, and by the way, a roll-up victory is not redemption for bloodying Cody Rhodes and making Brandy pass out. This is not redemption. This was not. And this died. The excitement for that win died in a heartbeat. It was like when Luger beat Yokozuna in '93 at SummerSlam, but he won by countout, so he didn't win the title, but he got like all the balloons. Have you ever seen that?
Luke Harper, no, not sorry. Brody Lee fired a shotgun at Cody Rhodes, and Dustin Rhodes responded by throwing an egg at his face.
Yeah, it was just bad. And then Uno and Colt, wow, what an interesting tag team that is. I like Colt Cabana.
No, it fucking isn't.
But pairing up with Evil Uno, I don't get this.
No.
I just don't get this. And then Dustin Rhodes cut the best promo, and my favorite thing of the whole night was Dustin Rhodes' fired up promo about getting the title shot and going up against Brody Lee on Wednesday. That was the best thing all night.
Now, do you want to know the result of that match?
What, this Dustin, this...
The match between Brody Lee and Dustin.
No, no, I don't. I don't. I really don't want to get hurt any more than I already have.
Okay, fine. I'll spare you.
The fact that you're like, okay, fine, I'll spare you, rather than, oh, it's really good, is really indicative of AEW as a whole. And here comes the match.
You know what, Sean? I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna do it because why not?
Oh no! All right, what happened?
Brody Lee wins.
Wow, what a surprise!
It was a 15-minute match.
Well, maybe Dustin will have gotten Brody to somewhat work.
But that's the thing. That makes this whole 8-man tag building to a title match worthless.
Yeah, because again,
and it doesn't make up for the fact that Cody Rhodes still died.
Because Tony Khan does not know what the hell he's doing booking. It's so patently obvious that he has no clue what is going on this show. And this next match was a match that I was really, really hoping was going to steal the show. FTR versus Adam Page and Kenny Omega for the All Elite Wrestling Tag Team Championships. What did you think?
So this was a tag match.
This was a tag match. Great analysis.
This was a tag match that started good.
Yep.
Well, it had a setup to become great.
Yep.
And then they fucked it up by going 3 days and 3 nights.
Yeah. This went forever. There was this, first of all, when one of the things I thought was really funny is in the video package when FTR dumped the beer on Omega's head, and then the Young Bucks had to restrain Omega like Kenny Omega was Scrappy Doo, going like, let me at him, Peppy Power, and and it was so cartoonily. It was just a cartoon. It made me laugh because it's like that so describes Omega. Adam Page has one of the better...
I've never thought about it like that, but you have just nailed Kenny Omega perfectly.
He is Scrappy Doo with 2 smaller Scrappy Doos in his little group. And Page Hangman Adam Page has probably the best theme of any original person on that show.
And he probably has one of the more interesting characters on that show.
It just works for him.
It's not saying much, but it.
And then Omega makes his entrance. First of all, game face on. You see the game face on Adam Page. Omega comes in. Omega goes out, and he stands on the ramp, and he looks like he creams himself. Like.
No, my first reaction was Kenny Omega looks stoned.
Well, it could have been. He probably was both. It probably was both. He creamed himself at his entrance, and then we get the in-ring intros. And I don't know whether you spotted this the same way I did. Kenny Omega was definitely the one of the... You know that thing with Sesame Street where they're like, one of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. That would be Kenny Omega amongst the rest of these three men.
Right, like, I knew this match had the potential to be good because FTR and Adam Page were in it, but the problem was that Adam Page's partner is Kenny Omega, who was a completely different styles clash from the other three men.
Omega was just being a goof. He looks like a goof against three wrestlers. And
I hated Justin Roberts' call of Kenny Omega because he did the Kenny Omega.
That was he? Glitchy robot. Glitchy robot. He stuck to that O for way longer than he should have, as if that was hyping him up anymore, because Justin Roberts is a glitched out, water-soaked robot.
It sucked.
It did. I hate in-ring intros to begin with, but...
I mean, I'm fine with ring entrance intros and championship intros as long as they are quick and to the point and they look cool, but this wasn't even that cool.
No. But they did get bonus. They did get a bonus for a lockup, though. They did get a lockup. And I believe also, if I'm not mistaken, Hikaru... Oh, no, they did the pie face thing. I was just about to say they did a close-up. So we are now, with 2 matches to go, we have had a grand total of 2 lockups. Then the refs, once again, still useless, as... there was double boots and a bunch of double team moves, and the ref wasn't even trying to get anybody out of the ring because the refs, why are they even there? What's the point?
So the referee's counting 1, 2, 3, and then Kenny Omega and Adam Page is doing whatever the hell they want with FTR.
It's just, and then Adam Page and Kenny Omega keeping on the backslap tag run, but if you notice, you never saw, I think, bless you, you never saw FTR, I don't believe, maybe they did it once, but you didn't see FTR backslap tag.
The most they did was a blind tag where Dax Hardwood would hold out his hand and Cash Wheeler would tag him in.
Yeah, there was a really cool one, too. There was a cool one, too, where I think Adam Page actually got him up like almost in an atomic drop. And that's when the blind tag happened, and I thought that one was pretty cool.
But I never saw FTR do a backslap tag.
No, and Dax is incredibly talented. Particularly, I mean, Cash Wheeler's pretty good too, but I really am high on Dax Hardwood. He's really good.
Because the thing with Dax Hardwood is that the thing with him over Cash Wheeler is that Dax has a face and he has facial expressions that draw you in.
He does. He
can tell an entire story of a match just with his face alone.
And there was a great, when they were getting the heat on him, there was a great hope spot with the roll-up with Adam Page where he gets the roll-up behind the ref's back, but the ref's distracted, so they didn't, so it didn't happen. JR's commentary immediately improves when there's something in the ring he likes. Because he was started to suck just a little bit less when FTR was doing their thing.
Well, because they're probably the best talents that know how to work an actual professional wrestling match. It's just a shame.
Wrestle. Yeah.
It's just a shame that they don't have any other tag teams they can really work with.
I know. I mean, I would... them and Private Party probably could have a good match, but they would have to slow Private Party down a lot in order to make it happen. But
they did have a match on television, and from what I heard, FTR and Private Party did have a good match.
yeah, I didn't see it, but I know that they have had a match. But then Kenny Omega, then for comeback number 1, because we can't have a match with just one comeback, even with FTR. So in comeback number 1, Kenny Omega does a bunch of pointing around. You know, I always hated with Kenny is that he always, like, does this little, like, hop skip before he actually starts running somewhere, or he has to point at it, or whatever. He always has this big, just, I hate to use the word gesticulating, but he really does just, like, he flails. And he premeditates everything he's going to do with some level of direction of, hey, I'm going this way, or I'm doing this, or I'm going like that, which completely takes you out of the moment of, if you were in a fight with somebody, you would not do that. You'd want to keep the element of surprise.
It's like an over-dramatic kindergarten girl.
Yeah.
He was just
overly dramatic
around like a girl.
He was overly dramatic.
Jumping around like a, and even with the women, you don't jump around like that if you're not taking it seriously. And Kenny Omega didn't look like he was taking it seriously.
Well, and unfortunately, he thinks that is the most serious thing of all time. And his covers look like crap. He never actually, like, presses the shoulders down. They lose all their functionality with the way that Omega goes for a pinfall attempt. Every time, he, like, barely had a shoulder on the guy with a leg hook, and he was raising the hand up, trying to get the count, instead of actually, like, the functionality of the pin. It's not a pin. It's lazy. It's overdramatic oversight for things that are really basic.
It really hurt my stock in Kenny Omega to the point where I'm starting to question if he was even the best wrestler in the world in his time in Japan, or if it's just the guys of Japan booking around his weaknesses and doing whatever they can to make sure that they get what they want out of him.
It's a different style with Kenny Omega, and he also was not in free control the way that he is now, is Kenny Omega. There were certain things that they would definitely cap on him because New Japan, to some degree, knew what they were doing in that respect because it's a different style and a different format. So it's not that he wasn't majorly popular there. But
the other thing, too, with Kenny Omega is that you can just see that he doesn't have any real formal training. And any training that he did have, he didn't listen to it, and he's just doing whatever he wants to.
And it's also, I noticed this too, if you look at the way, like, he does the nodding and, like, the really excited eyes and, like, even some of the ways he looks around at some of the man motions, you can tell that his favorite wrestler growing up was the Ultimate Warrior. It was very apparent in this match that Kenny Omega, and he's even admitted this, that his favorite wrestler was the Ultimate Warrior. I noticed it more here than any other match he's been in.
I bet you anything, his favorite match ever was Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior, because he has the mannerisms of both, especially the Warrior.
God, he'd be more regarded if you had more Hulk Hogan, to be dead honest with you. Because Hogan at least knew how to captivate people. And
captivate what people? You're in an arena with almost nobody, and everyone's in the nosebleeds.
Oh, maybe those people setting off the fireworks. There was an inverted Rana that we had already seen earlier in the night. All of the legwork that FTR had done up to that point on Kenny Omega just didn't matter because he just no-sold it.
Because he no-sells anything. He no-sells everything. Nothing. He doesn't know the concept of selling.
Then he makes his own comeback with the Snapdragons, which looked bad. I don't care for that at all. And then Paige makes a comeback, which could have been better, because, you know, if this had been the first comeback, and Adam Page actually got to rally around, then FTR did a bunch of Bulldogs. They did the Shades of the British Bulldogs, and they did a couple of the Steiner Bulldogs, which didn't win it. And this got a little finisher heavy.
Thing. You're hitting these really awesome, really powerful moves, and you're only getting 2 counts?
That was all night. That was all night with everybody. Moves mean nothing in this show. Moves have
But
zero
especially
value.
this match, because they copied so many of their own moves, especially the finish.
Yeah, they do a spike pile driver and it didn't win, and then they do a second one and then it does win. After the miscommunication from Paige and Omega.
And to take one final shit on all of this, did it not at all feel like FTR were involved in this match?
I don't think they booked this.
Did it feel like FTR was involved?
I don't think they booked this at all. To be dead honest with you, I don't
No.
think they had a single thing to do with this match, and that's very apparent because FTR would not have stood for this BS, but they're trying to accommodate Tony Khan, but Tony Khan does not know what the hell he's doing.
But
I say it again.
In particular, go ahead.
I say it again. Tony Khan does not know what the hell he's doing. And as evidenced by when FTR won the night, they got their beer. God forbid you have a brand, but let's do a plain white shape that has the name beer written on it. And even JR was like, oh, gotta love that generic beer. Why? 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 Just why? I just want to know why.
Like, you couldn't just get, I don't know, any sort of beer advertisement? Didn't have to be any.
And then it's just,
But no, here's the thing. Here's my point, is that this felt like the Asuka, Sasha, and Bayley thing all over again. It felt like FTR were not involved because the whole video package before this match and the whole story of this match was Kenny Omega and Adam Hangman Page breaking up. And FTR's victory was nullified because they were the plot device to get them to feud with each other.
That's a fair. I suppose that's a fair point. And did Tully even get involved?
No, he didn't get involved.
Why was he there?
Just there. He was just watching.
I don't.
That FTR's victory meant nothing because we had to spend 2 minutes following the Bucks and Omega after the match, after Omega left Adam Hangman Page hanging.
In a very obviously set up angle that they didn't even get the audio of mostly.
Exactly. We just watched them walking with each other for like 2 minutes. What did that do?
Nothing. It jacked themselves
It did
off, which is what this whole show is. And then,
I know.
speaking of jacking ourselves off, in a great transition here, the Mimosa Mayhem match between Chris Jericho and Orange Cassidy. What did you think?
This was a gimmick match that sucked ass. I didn't care. It was not helped by the fact that we were 4 hours into a show. I did not want to watch it anymore. And I feel bad for anyone that had to pay to see this shit. And I'm going to speak directly to you, Joshua Campbell. Tell your son, Chris Jericho, to lose about 30 pounds. He looks fucking fat.
Yeah, he really has. He's not great.
They start this match running at each other, and Chris Jericho performing the sloppiest code breaker I've ever seen in my entire life.
He had two very sloppy code breakers, but before we got to that...
Especially the one to start this match. He didn't even get Orange Cassidy on his knees. Like, Orange Cassidy fell down after Chris Jericho already hit the mat.
But did you hear the promo before this? Where Jericho said, by the way, this was not because I had any issue with Orange Cassidy or anything like that. It was an experiment to see if I could put over a talent and make him a main eventer. And look, I did it. Look, Orange Cassidy's a main eventer. I've proved it. Look at him. He's great now. He's terrific now. He's the best. But now I'm going to beat him in a match that's one of a kind that involves mimosas because mimosas. And Orange Cassidy, but he's a star now. Just remember, he's a star.
Did Chris Jericho in that promo basically just dismiss the entire storyline they've been building up to that point?
Pretty much. They're like, the experiment's over.
This was an experiment to see if I could make Orange Cassidy a main eventer?
That's literally what he said.
What fucking guy would say that in a promo?
Because Jericho knows this is garbage. He knows this is garbage, but he's trying to relive his days. He's going through his goddamn midlife crisis. And he and Alex Marvez looked like a scared lump standing next to him. And why is Jericho still Le Champion when he hasn't had the belt in like 4 to 5 months?
I don't know. I don't fucking tell Chris Jericho what to do right now.
And then
they start wrestling. I'm going to use that in quotation marks because the whole thing was trying to dunk each other in the orange mimosa. And then Chris Jericho starts going over to the tables that they had set up with champagne bottles, and he starts hitting Orange Cassidy directly in the head. And Chris Jericho, did you not watch your friend Matt Hardy hit his head slammed on concrete not 2 hours ago? And he's now doing this hardcore bullshit.
Well, I wouldn't consider a mimosa tray hardcore. I mean, that thing smashed in a million pieces. That thing was probably frail Chinese plastic. I have no doubt.
In my notes,
I get what you're saying.
In my notes, I literally wrote down AEW is unnecessary violence.
If you could even call it violence, it's.
Yes, because he was hitting him in the fucking head.
But yeah, it's just the thing is,
why? All this whole match was just a bunch of why.
This match didn't need this crap gimmick. This was a crap gimmick match. If this had just been a regular match, I would have probably gotten more invested in it because there were some parts of this that were not bad. You know, I actually liked the fact that Cassidy pretended to put his hands in his pockets like he didn't care, but instead tried to jumpstart Jericho. I wish that Jericho had not actually hit that code breaker and that Pockets actually had gotten the fight first. I think that would have been a much more intriguing in my case, because Cassidy's whole gimmick is that he's lazy, but in this case he's pretending to be lazy, but no, he's pissed and he wants to beat Chris Jericho up. I liked that. There's something about Cassidy, I will admit that. It's just marred under a bunch of stupid garbage. Like everything else in this show, there was some really good stuff, but it was buried under so much trash that you couldn't even appreciate the good because there was so much trash.
Exactly. And here's the whole thing that this whole match and this whole storyline was premised on. Did it make Orange Cassidy a person who could be a main event wrestler?
By putting Jericho in a mimosa that clearly was not a mimosa. No. But that's because Orange Cassidy is not a main eventer. I like Orange Cassidy. I think that there's something to him if he would stop with the play kicks and stop with all the really stupid shit. But there's something to the gimmick. He wouldn't be bad as an underneath guy or a mid-carder. But he's not in this position. He should not be in this position. This is doing him a disservice. This is doing Jericho a disservice. And then they did a crappy hockey fight. And I hate hockey fights unless it's in hockey. But there were some decent punches from Cassidy. They went around the I didn't really care for the walls of Jericho being broken up by splashing mimosa in his face.
Like, of all the things you're going to break up with that particular thing, you're going to throw orange juice at Chris Jericho's face. That's what you're going to do.
But I mean, the punches were decent. Honestly, I thought this was the best of all the Orange Cassidy matches I've seen up to now. This is probably the best one he's had to date, just because it seems like his fundamentals have improved since working with Jericho. I will give him that. I think
the biggest problem is that you're having one of the only guys who has a name in Chris Jericho, and you're having him put over Orange Cassidy, and you couldn't have him put over someone else, anyone else on this show who actually has talent and could eventually be a main event wrestler.
Jericho was champion 6 months ago. Think about that.
And what's happened since then. He's been involved in the Stadium Stampede match, which you and me and Joshua have all agreed is one of the worst cinematic matches of all time.
I barely watched it.
Now he's in the Orange Mimosa fuckery.
This was, it just, they did this. There was a code breaker that Orange Cassidy was supposed to counter. It was a countered code breaker, or I think Cassidy got countered by a code breaker that just did not work. Jericho's dad bod is super off-putting. But all in all, this match was not as bad as I expected it to be. But this match should not have happened. This is like finding like a penny in your turd. It's like it's not. I'm in pain,
let's just
Sky.
say this right now. I think you could beat up Chris Jericho.
At this point, I'm thinking I might. And I made the challenge, Jericho. The offer still stands. I will, anytime, anywhere, any place, except for AEW, and I will not let Tony Khan book it. But anywhere else, I will make it happen. But speaking of finishing this off, because I'm burning myself out here. MJF versus Jon Moxley, our main event. I am so exhausted. I can only imagine how you would have felt after 5.5 hours leading up to this. What did you think?
This was the best match of the night and was also the most frustrating match of the night.
Yes.
Because they had the potential to be a really great match and never hit it.
I think it hit it in a lot of points, but I think that they really
Whenever
did.
they would hit it, they would do something else that would ruin it.
I don't feel like MJF was much of a heel in this match, except for the finish. And I think that was weird.
Except for the finish.
That was the weird part.
The way this match played out, MJF was the babyface and Jon Moxley was the heel.
It's like, honestly, I think that if they wanted MJF to look like a heel in this, they should have gotten Moxley juice first. And they should have had that. But in my opinion, if Moxley had gotten juice first from MJF while he was doing his wrestling stuff or whatever, then this would not have been as much of what felt like a flip. And then when they flipped back for the finish, that's why it felt so flat. I didn't think about that, but I watched this match and I'm like, something's wrong here. Something was out of place, and I think you're right. I think there was something of a turn.
You felt more sympathy for MJF and all the shit that was happening. So the first part of this match is MJF in control of Jon Moxley, and Jon Moxley clearly does not have the in-ring acumen that MJF has.
Well,
and then they go outside,
he does. He just doesn't want to use it.
But then Jon Moxley takes advantage of his brawler status, throws MJF outside, and then he starts beating him up outside the ring, throwing him into the ring post over and over. And he gets the damage on MJF.
Did you notice, before we get that far, why is Jon Moxley walking that far to get to the ring?
Because it's supposed to be cool and edgy.
But why would a camera be there?
Look like a badass.
No, it's not. It's not. And then he stopped in the middle of a hallway to like punch himself in the eye to be like, "Oh yeah, I'm a champion." And then they made they
gave me Goldberg flashbacks.
And then their theme came out. You know, he came out to his theme, and whoever is making the themes for AEW needs to be fired. Point blank. They all suck. They all suck. Then this match, can you believe it, Sky, was the first singles non-stipulation match that wasn't the women's match that this show had, and it's the main event.
I would not be surprised because AEW doesn't know how to use stipulations.
And when
to use stipulations.
And then Justin Roberts with his go back, kids, go back and watch the face that Justin Roberts makes when he's doing that John extended Moxley. He is a glitchy robot. Look at him. I swear to you. Not only
that, but you could tell how happy he was doing the entrance, like thinking, this is the greatest introduction of all time.
I swear to you, watch it, and you will see that I'm on to you, Justin Roberts. You are not a human being. You are a robot. And so this match gets along, and then MJF takes over with some headlocks and says the funniest line of the night. When one of the funniest lines of the night, when he takes him down. He's got him in a stiff headlock, and MJF yells out, "Sorry, folks, you're getting wrestling tonight," and continues on. Genius. MJF is actually genius, and I love it.
But I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Why is it that the biggest heels, MJF and FTR, are the guys that actually do professional wrestling, and the baby faces are guys who can't wrestle?
Because the guys who are baby faces are the ones organizing this show, and they're all terrible at it. And nobody knows how to be a good baby face anymore. And heels make good baby faces, but the knowing how to work and trying to work have been so lost by booking or just lack of information that it's just I don't know. I don't have the answers anymore. They did a smash to the grapefruits for MJF, but the camera missed the shot because it was backwards. So you saw him on his back, so you didn't get MJF's facials until after the fact. Then, for the better part of 2.5 minutes, they wrestle on the outside with MJF and Jon Moxley. And Jon Moxley's beating him down. The referee's doing nothing. No count. No nothing. No, nothing like that. The MJF's calling.
It's almost like the referee was going, "Please get him back in the ring," and Jon Moxley's like, "No, referee, please get him in the ring." No,
that referee was one of the most squealy-voiced people I've ever heard. That ref had no authority, like not anywhere near an authoritative voice. And it was bothering me. And then the whole thing was like, MJF's calling for the ref as Moxley's beating him down. And the ref's like, you got to pin him in the ring, Moxley. You got to pin him in the ring. First of all, no, he doesn't. Because if you were actually doing your job and counting, and it was a double count out, Moxley would still retain the title. So no, you're wrong. 2, if you actually knew how to do your job, you would have broken that up, or you wouldn't have allowed that to happen in the first place. It's just... The ref really took me out of what was an otherwise good match. And their refereeing is absolutely, save for Aubrey Edwards, is terrible. It is terrible.
Like, honestly, they should bring back Mike Chioda and have him be a referee full time, because every other ref besides Aubrey Edwards sucks.
Well, and they should also have wrestlers who actually wrestle with rules. Instead of doing all this indie flip show garbage that completely devalues the point of a referee being there in the first place.
Exactly.
And then...
Speak it, Sean. Speak the truth.
And then they do... What was really cool is MJF caught Moxley with the arm. He was working on that arm all day, and then he said, "Did you see the double stomp from the second rope onto the arm?"
That looks nasty.
I'm not a big fan of double stomps, but that one I really liked. Because it was different, but it still worked in the context. It was great. Then MJF got the juice with turnbuckle, and...
Hold on. Before you get to the juice, can I say what one of my favorite spots was of this whole match?
Yes.
So, MJF is working over the arm, and he has Jon Moxley in what is like a reverse armbar, but he has his arm completely behind Jon Moxley's back, and he's pulling on that thing. And that was my favorite, because this was the first time I looked up at the show, and I actually said, that looks like it legitimately hurts.
Yeah. There was...
MJF...
He's great.
MJF is so good. At only 24...
Yeah, he's got so much ahead of him. But, man, I really do... Then MJF got the juice, and I really, really think that Moxley should have gotten some juice first. If they wanted to keep MJF and the heel finish the way they were doing. And then the ref made a count! What?
I know.
You can't do it where you leave 2 minutes of no count and then all of a sudden throw a count in the middle.
So we get no counting, and then Jon Moxley does the slingshot to MJF into the ring post on the outside. That's where he gets the blood. And then after a couple seconds, the referee goes, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, where were you 5 minutes ago? Were you asleep? Did the heat kill you? Oh, my goodness.
And then Moxley starts hitting with a bunch of forearms. I've mentioned to you before, you've heard this.
His comeback.
You've heard this from me. I am more of a fan of a punch than a forearm as far as the strikes go. It's just my personal preference. I'm not knocking people who do forearms instead or elbows or whatever. I like wrestling punches. That's because a wrestling punch,
like they are intended to hurt people.
Working punches is an art. Good working punches is an art. Then they do the kneeling punch trick. Oh, and then MJF goes for a Fujiwara armbar, and I felt like that should have been the end of the match. MJF should have beaten Moxley with a tap out because his arm gave out for a Fujiwara armbar. That would have been, to me, the best finish for this match. But of course we kept going.
But no, we go for another 3 days and 3 nights.
They do another air raid. They do one of those air raid sirens. I think it was Moxley did it on MJF, and that looked great. Then they did the kneeling punch trade, and then MJF's low blow would have gotten a pop, I bet. But it was master manipulation. Even the commentators couldn't help but be like, he's doing great stuff. Then they did 5 minutes of finishers, and then they did the finish, where finally MJF has gone back to being a heel. Wardlow goes up, tosses the ring, botches the toss. MJF goes to get it, but the referee's back is turned because the dirty deeds, the paradigm shift, was banned for the whole match. Moxley sees that the referee is distracted because of Wardlow, hits the dirty deeds, paradigm shift, and gets the cover and beats the only good thing going for AEW.
And then he does the stupidest, derpiest look afterwards where he shrugs his shoulders. Like, okay.
This was still, to me, this was the match of the night. It just felt weird. But the whole thing, when I finished watching this show, is that this show was booked by a Smark. And that Smark's name is Tony Khan. And he clearly does not have any concept of what is going on as far as what people want or what wrestling is. Because he's been hoodwinked into thinking that this is the stuff that works because it's the stuff he likes. And it is, I swear to you, 2 years' time, there will be no AEW unless something really dramatically changes or they get somebody who actually knows what they're doing.
It feels so Bush League.
Yeah.
It feels like a super independent promotion with a lot of money thrown into guys who have never formally trained in professional wrestling. And that would be fine if this was like a low-rent indie promotion. But this is the second biggest promotion in the U.S. They have 1 million people who watch their TV shows.
More or less.
They can't even put on their good wrestling shows. And the WWE guys, the guys who have had formal training, they've evolved. Like John Moxley, he was pretty good as Dean Ambrose. Now he's evolved and he can't have a match in the ring for longer than 5 minutes.
Or 28 seconds.
Can you resist the urge to go outside? Can you resist the urge to actually do collar and elbow taps, throw actual punches, do good suplexes, do good submission holds? Nobody in this company besides MJF and FTR know how to do that.
And Cody.
Because no one cares.
And Dustin. But Dustin doesn't get as much opportunity. It's just, they have so much talent on this show, but it's like I said 2 or 3 times, it's buried under garbage. There was a terrific 2.5 hour show in this 5.5 hour show. But there was 3 hours worth of garbage toppled on top of that 2.5 hour show that completely destroyed any credibility or semblance of enjoyment I could have gotten out of almost any of it. My favorite part was Dustin's promo. So think about that, folks. Sky, we are 2 hours into this podcast. What is your ranking out of 10? I don't normally do these, but for the sake of fairness, because we did it with SummerSlam, what out of 10 do you give this show?
This was a terrible, low-budget indie show that went for 5 hours and would not goddamn stop. I hate AEW, I hate Tony Khan, and I never want to see any of this shit ever again. 2 out of 10.
Well, Sky, don't count your chickens, Buster, because I may need you for more reviews. And I will put you... If I'm not doing this alone, I'm not dragging myself out through the drudges by myself. You want to be a co-host so damn bad, you're going to have to go in through thick and thin. And this is the thick. I myself...
The next show's in 2 months. I'm not ready for it.
I myself am giving this show the same grade I gave SummerSlam. There were some good spots in this, but it was marred by a lot of crap and really was a one-match show that was marred by its own issues, but I'm giving it a Bret Hart 4 out of 10. And if this means that the standard of professional wrestling in this juncture in 2020 and the way that things have gone and the way that we view professional wrestling, if the standard for professional wrestling in 2020 is a 4 out of 10, that should tell you all you need to know about why hardly anybody watches any of the weekly episodic shows anymore. And that really says all it needs to know. Do better. Everybody, do better. But
You couldn't get through the show without spreading it over 4 days.
Yeah,
You had to watch it in 1 hour segments.
Yeah.
I had to watch it while drunk.
Yeah. And neither of us had a good time. We're both in pain. I'm going to go put in a catheter and go find some good enemas so I can just cleanse my body. I'm going to need a colonic irrigation after this. So I'm going to go ahead and take care of that. Sky, thank you for being on the show once again. We'll see you next week.
Thank you for having me, and fuck Tony Khan.
And on that wonderful note, it is time to take our first commercial break. We will see you on Tuesday for the live stream match of the week, and then we will see you on Friday. Thank you very much for listening, and we will see you right after these short commercial breaks.